Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and today I am delighted to be joined by Kevin Graham. You know, Kev, I should have checked before we came live today. It's been almost 6 years since episode 1 of A Celtic State of Mind. And on episode 1, you and I were, lauding the efforts of a certain Brendan Rodgers who was in charge of the club. And we've come a long way since then, haven't we, Kev? A long, long way since then.
Definitely. That would have been 5 days from now, the 10th of June. Would have been the first day that we recorded, because that was the day Scotland played England.
True, yeah, that's right.
Lee Griffiths' probably finest moment in the Scotland shirt, anyway. We were wondering how long I do remember the conversation. We were actually wondering how long we were going to hold on to Brendan Rodgers. That was the conversation that we had at that point. And yes. I just mentioned to you when we came on there, the emergency podcast we had when Rodgers walked it, and Neil Lennon was appointed. Look, I think I expected, after 6 months in the job with Ange, I think I expected this day to come. I didn't expect it to come as early, but it has, and we just need to deal with it. That's it. There's nothing we can do.
And we will deal with it. Yeah, we'll deal with it as a fan base, we'll deal with it as a club, and certainly on A Celtic State of Mind, we'll be dealing with it every step of the way as well. We've covered every day, really, of Ange's tenure at Celtic. Not quite every day of Brendan Rodgers', because we came in 6 years ago, like you quite rightly said, 6 years ago in June, and obviously every day of Neil Lennon's second tenure at Celtic Football Club. There's a lot of frustration, understandably, and amongst the Celtic support, Kev, because, I was writing earlier on this morning how that cup final where we clinched the Treble Treble, and you and I had been at the Double Treble together, the Motherwell game, the Marvin Comper game, right? And the memorable Aberdeen performance with Tommy Rogic and the Lightning and all of that, Kevin Miles jumping in on the photo bombing the historic photo. But I remember after the game against Hearts 2-1, Edouard scoring both goals. My walk was from Hampden Park to the Beechwood where I parked my car, and news started filtering in that Neil Lennon had been given the job permanently. Obviously, I get into my motor, you fire on the tranny, you fire on the wireless to see the confirmation of that story developing on my drive home. And it dampened the mood, Kev. This is what I'm getting at, right? So at this point, we've won 8 in a row. We've won a treble. We're going for 9 in a row. And the rug, I felt, was pulled from under Celtic fans' feet that evening because we weren't able to fully embrace what we had just achieved. Obviously, we enjoyed it. You celebrate the game, you celebrate the win. But in the back of your mind, you're thinking, he's been given a job permanently. I mean, it was already a blow that Brendan Rodgers had walked out the way that he had. And I feel that the celebrations followed by the news filtering out through all the usual sources have had a similar kind of vein to them this weekend, Kev.
It did. I must admit, it was sort of the game on Saturday, right? And this is maybe going to sound big-headed or arrogant, eh? I reckon it was a game that we couldn't win. If we had won 5 or 6-0, everybody was going to say, it's Inverness. If we would have lost, it was going to be the big. It was our own. We had more to lose than what we actually had to win on Saturday. So I was already quite nervous going into the game because surely that was. Then during the game, I was sitting with guys who, between us all, we've got about 150 years worth of watching Celtic between us, And we started getting very reflective.
So there's only 2. There was just 2 years then.
No, there was more than 2. 3 years. There was 3 years, right? And I says to them, and that's weird that you mentioned the treble, because I was sitting next to Vinny, the same guy, at the treble when Lennon got the job. So maybe it's him. Maybe he's a conduit of trebles being bad luck. Anyway, and I says to them, because we're talking about the young team, right? All the young team that go up on our supporters club and all of that now, they've seen nothing but success. Absolutely anything for success. And there was one point, it was just after Jota scored the third. I went like to Davy and Vinny. I says, see if all this ended tomorrow, we would still be here, eh? And they went, aye, of course we would. And at that point, I just got a kind of feeling this is the end of the cycle. This is the end of this. I was just something about the whole sort of atmosphere round about the game. I just felt this is it. This is we're rolling the dice again in the summer, and that's where we are. We are rolling the dice, and even like walking back to the supporters coach and all of that. Even that, you were just going on about, oh, this makes it all worthwhile, like another treble. I've seen 6 trebles now. I've seen 6. Which is utterly astonishing. But then you've always got that wee worry that we're going to need to roll the dice again. I love Big Ange, and I can. If you were duped by what he says and you take that to heart, then I'm sorry, give me your bank details. Football's a strange business. There's folk lie to you every single day, and football is a horrible, horrible business, and that's what it is. It's a business, and look, my take on it was this.
The only thing honest about football now, Kev, is the fans. The only thing honest, the only honesty left within football is the fans.
The only reason that we're a special football club is us. Not me and you, but the whole fan base as a whole. If Postecoglou, I mean, Sky Sports have said they knew that he's just about to speak with Spurs. He spoke to Spurs. They know what this is just gone down to sign the contract, right? If he spoke to Spurs and liked what he says, right, and liked what he says, they're going to like him the same as we all liked him, because he's got that sort of aura about him. The big man would have went in there and go, I can do a job for you. I can do a job for you, no problem. And they would have loved what he says. Scottish football and Celtic have got nothing to keep him bar us. And even then, at the end of the day, that's not going to be enough.
When they dangle the carrot that we know will be dangled in front of them. There's so much to discuss. There's so much to discuss because a lot of people, I feel let down. I've been monitoring social media last night, today, been listening to various radio shows. I'm watching the Celtic News Now feature coming through with the latest news to see what the update is. I'm looking at the odds. All of these things will be discussed. There is a lot of anguish. There's a lot of frustration. Some might say even anger in relation to this developing. I'm like yourself. I don't think about someone's departure while I'm living in the moment, Kev, but I know that it's going to come eventually at this football club because all the heroes depart. But then you start looking at all the different nuances, everything that's been said over the past 2 years, and Ange talking and normalising or trying to get us to the point where we almost expect to lose our heroes. Don't get too close to your heroes. Cheers, Ange. I didn't think we were talking about you. Right. Des Brennan, here we go. I don't mind him going as such, but to walk around the park, pump your fist and grab your heart, really, I've seen a lot of comments like this. I've seen a lot of comments around his speech where he name-checked Tommy Burns, for example, after we had won the league, saying that it was maybe crass or it didn't mean anything, it was empty words. I guess what that would probably come down to is when this deal started. When was the genesis of Ange to Spurs? Now, at this moment in time, Kev, you don't know, neither do I. Very few people will actually know the answer to that. The agent, Ange himself, Celtic, maybe, and Spurs will know the answer to that. And there's obviously a suggestion that it could have been when there was an announcement by Spurs that Scott Munn would be going to the club. And obviously he has got links having worked with the City Group previously. He knows who Ange Postecoglou is. He's the kind of guy that if he was to go into a team like Spurs, he would really fight Ange's corner. He knows him personally, Kev. He knows what he's capable of. He would fight his corner, something that might appear as a left field appointment on the face of it when you've got someone like Scott Munn in your corner. Fighting your case is going to be completely different, right? So I'm looking at when was that announced? That was the beginning of April. Now, there's no guarantee that that's when Ange's name was in the frame or there was an approach made or any of these things. Then you start looking at, right, Dermot Desmond came to Celtic Park, didn't he? And he was pictured in the foyer with his son and with Ange Postecoglou. What was that meeting? Was that a last throw of the dice? Was that us trying to get him stapled down to a longer-term deal so that even if the inevitable happened, we're going to get better compensation? Because that is now coming to the fore as well, Kev. If we lose who is a prized asset, we're not going to be making the money we did with Brendan Rodgers, are we?
We're not going to know, and mean, I remember when the pictures came out with Ross and Dermot Desmond, people were going, oh, that's them talking about a war chest, that's them talking about this and that. But then football doesn't stop, to parlay his phrase. Now, I'm sure for a fact that Ange Postecoglou was never Spurs' top choice as manager. But after what they've been through, and as soon as they would have spoke to him, he became the top choice. Same as he became your top choice when Eddie Howe decided he couldn't come up without his mates in a Ford Cortina. That's how these things happen. Postecoglou's had decades trying to get into European football. He gets into European football. He does really, really well with us. The next thing you can, you're getting a top 6 team in England who have been to a Champions League final in the last 5 years, who this is their first year out of Europe for, I think, over a decade. We can't compete with that, and that sickens me to actually say that. That's it.
Well,
it does. But I'm a realist enough to understand that us singing his name is us singing his name and giving him all the love in the world that we've actually gave him and giving him the chance and all of that. That's no enough than having to go to Ross County again 2 times next season. That's not enough having to go to like Batodry, play Rangers.
So it's Malcolm
6
Mackay's
times
fault.
again, Everything's Malcolm Mackay's fault.
Listen, Kev, you're right. We are going to look at the pros and the cons. What makes people, not just the money, we know that's the obvious one, what makes big performing players and managers look to, no matter who you are, be that a Kieran Tierney that comes through the ranks or an Ange Postecoglou who, until the day he walked in the building, had no connection to the club whatsoever. What makes the fact that there's something just down the road there in the EPL that's such an attractive proposition, not just the money, it's got to be said. And what about the Scottish game is always going to hold us back? There's loads of different reasons for it, Kev. And I want to talk about how the people are feeling that are in the comment section. We're well over 15, heading towards 1,600 strong in the comments. If you want to chat, if you want to discuss what's happening today, then subscribe to the channel on the YouTube. Give us a thumbs up also. And I've got mad as a brush. Good afternoon all. What a weekend. And I'm still rough. It's definitely worth it. That's what I was talking about. I just feel the sense that, we should have really been celebrating, not just yesterday, not just today, but, all the way through the summer. That's the proper, not the bragging rights. Celebrate all the way through the summer. There's something to look forward to. There's a Japanese tour. There's, we're going to be playing games in South Korea. Surely there'll be 4 or 5 signings coming into the building, Kev, and then we'll look ahead to next season. We'll look ahead to making inroads to the European scene, and then the rug's been pulled from under our feet. Celtic will need to act fast. This move for Ange is going to be imminent. It's probably going to happen in the next 48 hours. And when you look at how it leaves us as fans, I sometimes think, right, we're not the hard-nosed business types. We're not the ones who have sold our souls to broadcasting deals or, money, dirty money from elsewhere, Kev. We're fans who work, who pay for the tickets, and like you say, week in, week out, go through in the supporters' buses. And I think that there's 2 things here. Firstly, and I mentioned this during the week to you and the Acsom troops, I think as fans, we're always going to be emotional, but I think we need to be a wee bit more ruthless. And what I mean by that is, it's like these people are human beings, right, who are here because they've been offered, I'm talking about Ange specifically, offered the opportunity of his life to get into European football, right? He's spoken about growing up as a Liverpool fan and all this, right? Get all that. So he sees us as a stepping stone. Just like all the plethora of managers and players in the past, Kev, have seen Celtic just as a stepping stone to get to what they really want. And I just think, well, they're ruthless with us. They really are. So I think we, as a football club and as a fan base, really should be ruthless with them. And what I mean by that is when we come to talk about who's going to replace Ange, and I said last week I didn't want to talk about that. Now it's definitely pertinent to talk about it. How are we going to replace him? Who do we replace him with? I don't think emotion comes into it. I think you become ruthless. You say who's going to do, out of all the candidates, who's going to do the best job? And I think you know who I'm talking about because he has been mentioned, and we're going to be looking at the odds just now. And by the way, I'm not backing him. I'm just saying we need to be ruthless because I just feel we're getting used time and time again as a football club. And by the way, you accept that because you know where we are in the great scheme of things, Scottish football. So what are the odds at the moment? Brendan Rodgers, according to Betfair, is now the favourite, Kev. He's now the favourite to take over. He was 13-8 on Sunday. He is now 5-4. You then have... Sorry, I'll run through just a few of these and you can tell me your thoughts. Tell me your thoughts. We then have 3 sitting at 15-2. And the 3 candidates are Enzo Maresca, Davy Moyes and John Kennedy. We'll talk about that as well because Kennedy's been linked with a move to Spurs. Then we've got another couple, Scott Brown and Stevie Clark at 17-2. And then we've got Knudsen, Neil Lennon, Graham Potter, Jesse Marsh at 14-1. So, Kev, that's what the odds are at the bookies. We are going to have to speak about what we do next. We've got to see how the board are going to respond to this. What do you feel first and foremost about this for us to be a wee bit more ruthless as football fans?
We need to be a bit more ruthless as football fans, but we will not be. I can guarantee you that. I mean, Davey, I was sitting next to the football and has already messaged me this morning saying that he's feeling that he's been duped in that. And I messaged him back and said, I'll give you 2 weeks. Then you'll be going, this guy, this boy. The next guy that walks in says he had Celtic as his Saputo team in 1975. Will all be actually gone mental again. That's what we need. That's what we need. Because that's
who
what
did you have?
Huh?
You had Dukla Prague away, didn't you?
No, I did have a Celtic team, but I also did have a Liverpool side. Because it was the early 80s, and Liverpool were European champions. And
did a few of them have moustaches and perms and that?
With the Lucian that, in Brazil 70. You always have to have a Brazil 70 team, but that's what we are as fans. And this is how we all talk about fans owning football clubs. And sometimes fans can't own a football club because of that emotion. We appointed Neil Lennon because of emotion. We hung on to Neil Lennon because of emotion, or the board did. That was the first time the board probably didn't get a business head and go like that. By the way, wait a minute, this is not going to fathom, and we all know what happened there, And you hope that they've got a bit more business sense this time. I mean, there's no point me saying who I want, but I will say who.
I'm going to ask you anyway.
That list, you're going to ask me anyway, but it doesn't matter what me and you say. It doesn't matter what the 1,500. It doesn't matter what the 1,747 that are actually watching us at this precise moment in time actually want. We didn't make that decision, and it's in the hands of guys that we hope get it right. I mean, and that is the worrying thing. That is a really, really worrying thing. And this is a massive test to see if we've learned for the Neil Lennon debacle.
Right.
This is a massive test.
Really interesting. You used the word worrying, right? Because we're talking about the Celtic board now, and it's worrying that all the eggs are in their basket, Kev, and it doesn't matter what we say, and it doesn't matter what polls are ran. It doesn't matter. They will make the decision anyway. Right. Let's rewind, because this is something that I was writing about this morning. Let's rewind to Ange Postecoglou getting the job. Now, what actually happened here was Eddie Howe's deal fell, through the trapdoor, and he decided it wasn't going to happen. And Celtic were, at that point, Kev, they were so determined. I'll give you the date. It's the 28th of May, 2021. And the Celtic PR machine was so determined to make everybody believe that we hadn't put all our eggs in the one basket, that the fan media were informed there was a second candidate, and the candidate had been there through the process, Kev. It wasn't just Eddie Howe. There was 2 candidates in the race. Eddie Howe's horse had fallen. There was now 1 candidate in the race. That was the line that was sold to us, Kev. You'll remember it, because obviously I shared this information with everybody in the Acsom team. That's what we were told. So you're thinking, right, I wonder who this is. The name of Ange Postecoglou started to be mentioned, and of course it was Ange. You've seen him flying in. By that time, the new CEO had started early. Don Mackay, welcome to the club. But let's have a look at the timeline, though, because on the 28th of May, 2021, that is when the Eddie Howe deal collapsed. Not too long ago, Ange was talking about the offer he had or the job he was in for at AEK Athens. And he said AEK was a possibility. almost at the same time as Celtic. It was a sliding doors moment. At that time of the year, clubs are looking for managers, and we got really close. They went another way, and literally, that's the important word, a day after, I got a call from Peter Lawwell. So who did they appoint at that time? They appointed Vladan Milicevic, and they appointed him on the 27th of May, 2021. So the phone call from Peter Lawwell happened on the 28th of May, 2021, which was the day the Eddie Howe deal collapsed. So there was obviously a narrative that they were trying to put out there, Kev, that we had two candidates all along, right? One of them had fallen, and we go with the second one. But if you want to look at the actual timeline, if you believe what Ange said on that day regarding AEK Athens, the timeline would suggest we only had one candidate. And then there's the suggestion that, okay, we were basically left up the creek without a paddle, Kev, at that stage. He's spoken to his contacts because we know his son was working at the City Group. And Ange Postecoglou's name's been thrown into the mix. We've given him a phone call. He's taken a job 14 days later. That is the timeline. And that is why it is a worry that the board are now thrown into a situation, Kev, where probably unexpectedly we're going to be without a manager very, very soon. What did you make of all that? Because obviously Ange came in and he was a roving success, so you don't really look at the intricacies of it if things are going well. We've spoken about that before. You know, success masks a million deficiencies, doesn't it? So what do you make of that? It doesn't surprise you, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't surprise me that we rolled the dice and got lucky, because that's what we did with Postecoglou. We got absolutely lucky with Postecoglou. I'm really hoping this time that the board have maybe got done their due diligence. As you say, maybe Dermot Desmond walked away after meeting Postecoglou. There's something afoot here. We're going to need to start looking for like a contingency plan. Anyway, it's going to happen. But how look, if you tell a lie often enough, it becomes fact, right? And Celtic have been brilliant at doing that over the last 20 years. Look, we can't say that Celtic haven't been great over the last 20 years. We can't actually say that they've got a lot of things wrong. But the major thing that they did get wrong was going into the 10 season, where obviously you've got COVID and stuff like that. But the seeds of that were sown when they brung back Neil. And that's what I'm worried about. I'm not slagging the board. They haven't became enemy number one. We are now in a complete and utterly difficult situation where our happiness, it is our happiness, let's not beat about the bush here, it is our happiness, is in the hands of guys that we have no control over. How many times has Dermot Desmond tried to appoint Roy Keane?
Yeah, I know.
It could, I mean, like, I could
at least twice.
Here, like, it was at least twice. At least twice. We didn't ken what they're thinking. We didn't ken what they're at Parkhead and talking about.
Do you think they are?
We don't know what's going on.
Do you think they're talking about Brendan Rodgers?
My rule is never go back. Never go back. And I think Rodgers, I understand why they would look at Rodgers. I really do. But
why not go back, Kev? Is that emotional? Don't go back because of the way it ended. Is this what I'm talking about with the ruthlessness? You know, the candidates that I ran through there, and I know some people like the Bodo Glimt manager, right? Out of the candidates, who is actually the best manager, the best coach out of the candidates that I mentioned? They're not my candidates. They're the names that are being put out there by the betting companies. And the odds have been decided upon. I mean, if you take the emotion out of it, who's the best coach?
The one that would jump out to me is the Bodo Glimt manager, and I don't think that would be too big a change to what Postecoglou's already brought in because of his background. But then, because we've been basically left in the lurch, you might see them go back to Rodgers, because if you do look at that list, Rodgers is a standout name on that list, like he was when we appointed him the first time around. He is a standout name on that list. I've maybe got a bit of a problem with the way that he left, but the man won us, and we've got an invincible treble under him, and I don't know what the relationship like behind the scenes with him. It's probably not as fraught as what we would hope that we would want it to be. But the only one that jumps out of that list to me that wouldn't be a massive upheaval was it Knudsen? Is it Knudsen? That's how you say it. That's
see the thing.
That's the one that jumps out to me at 14-1, and I'm like that. If I was a betting man, I'm going, that's the one that would jump out to me, because we can't just rip this all up and start again, because we've signed players to play a certain way, and if you're bringing in Davy Moyes, I mean, he's got a team of nightclub bouncers. That's his West Ham team. We are not a David Moyes team. We are not a Steve Clarke team. We're maybe a Jesse Marsh team. This is the way that I'm not 100% sure about that. But the one that jumps out to me, after seeing Bodo Glimt absolutely tan us our two legs and the way that they played, I think that would be a smoother transition than anybody else on the list.
If anyone had said to me just 7 days ago that next Monday, Paul, you will genuinely be looking at Brendan Rodgers as a candidate to replace Ange Postecoglou, I wouldn't have believed them. What do you think about the fact that, okay, we win this incredible 8th treble, world record 8th treble, Kevin? Like you say, I'm of the same era as you. I've been there since the first one being the Martin O'Neill season, of course. Mm-hmm. And we've not really had the time to really just enjoy it all over the summer and all this kind of stuff, and that's fine. We've already bought our season tickets. The deadline was quite stringently stated that it would not be extended, Kev. So that's done. You then get an email from the club, don't you, on the night of the Scottish Cup win, and it's a thank you email supposedly from Ange. It's as genuine as the programme notes used to be back in the day, written by the gaffer, probably written by somebody at the Celtic View. You get that. How are you feeling as a fan? Do you feel a bit mugged off, like you're saying your mate does? Do you feel at times like this that the communication has to be better? And I know, obviously, it's very tricky when negotiations are ongoing, but the Celtic fans are getting built into a bit of a frenzy from what I can see. And when the silence comes from the club, that's when somebody gets wished a happy birthday and we all go into meltdown. It is Kieran Tierney's birthday today, by the way.
Happy birthday, KT. Do you want to be a manager?
When the club wish him a happy birthday, I'm just look at the comment section underneath. I don't know if they already have, incidentally.
Aye, there's certain things that you'll never get told as a football fan, and if you get yourself really, really annoyed about them, then football's not really the game for you, is it? There's too much money involved. There's too much things going on in the background. You didn't care. That's why the Celtic fan media is absolutely massive. That's why you've got rumour mills. That's why you've got rumour pages and that, because nobody has a clue what's going on behind the doors. Somebody will come out and tell you one thing. Somebody will come out and tell you another thing. So, if Celtic did know, by the way, we'll maybe need to get this money in quick before this actually happens, then that's despicable. But we can only like hypothesize about that. We didn't care if it's true or not. Could be an account.
I'm not saying you wouldn't buy it. I'm not saying that at all. But I just feel that this is all coming at that time. It's the timing of it, Kev. It's the timing of us as fans are always there. But we're not really being fed any information.
I'm sure if I went back long enough, I could get a connection to Celtic having an early season ticket deadline right back to the Kennedy assassination, if he wanted me to go to my conspiracy theory links and all that. I think we're just looking everywhere at the moment because we're going, where do we go next? And I think there's a lot of panic and an awful lot of, we just need to sit back and go, this is where we are. In football, we can't control anything. The only thing we can control is if we turn up and how much of emotional investment that we actually go in. And you can't tell me, even though Postecoglou, even if the season tickets were still out, it doesn't matter who would come in. We're still going to sell out next season because that's what makes this club absolutely special. And it's sometimes our downfall It is sometimes their downfall, but I can't control it. I mean, I quite fancy the Bodo Glimt guy. The Jesse Marsh side, the Salzburg side were absolutely fantastic against us. Absolutely brilliant against us. Again, would he be much of a change coming in? But I could say I wanted Roy Race as the manager. The board are not going to listen to me. I could say I want Roy Race. I want bloody Hotshot Hamish.
Discuss it. We will still discuss it.
Aye,
Hotshot Hamish and Mighty Mouse. Yeah, now you're talking my language. Talking the language, obviously everybody becomes body language experts, Kev. Everybody becomes lip reading experts. We've seen all that over the last couple of weeks. But Ange was using language after the game. He was using words like selfish. Is to go away and be selfish, and people felt that was basically him just saying, I'm not want to talk about anything other than the victory. Well, do you see it as selfish, what he is doing as we speak right now? He could well be down in London discussing his deal. Do you see it as selfish? Do you just see it as part and parcel of the game he's in?
Of course it's selfish. He's got to look after himself. Of course it's selfish, but he's in a game which is really, really selfish, where you're selfish will earn you quite a bit of money. And he's just looking at it's took him so long to get into European football. And this chance is new. We gave him the chance of a lifetime, and new Spurs have gave him a bigger chance of a lifetime, eh? And there's not a thing we can actually do about it. Of course it's selfish, but that I don't think in the football world being selfish is a bad trait, because I think everybody's selfish in some form of way. So I'm not having a go at him with it being a selfish decision. Any decision that you're making, it's to do with you and your family, you've got to be selfish.
Yeah. Yeah, you do.
So for folk, if somebody wants to actually cast that up at him, going, no, I think you're too far off the mark there. No, of course it was a selfish decision, but any decision we make selfish.
You said earlier on about being left in the lurch, and we were left in the lurch, Kev, obviously when Brendan Rodgers left the way that he did. And I think that knee-jerk kind of reaction of the Celtic board at that time was they were almost in kind of like defensive mode, and they went for something that they knew. And that's why Neil Lennon ended up in the door. And at the time, I understand why they did that. I think the biggest error was the permanent nature of the job at the end of the campaign. However, that might have been something that they had promised Neil Lennon when he was given the job temporarily, if he was able to conclude the season with a treble. And I feel that at the moment, although it shouldn't have happened, because as was said there, if you want to do the timeline, Scott Munn goes to Spurs at the beginning of April. He's probably identified Ange Postecoglou as a front runner because they've lost Conte in the March, haven't they? And if that's then happened, when have the discussions taken place? At what point has our club then started realising, like you said earlier on, they've come away and said, we're going to lose him. We need to start putting things in place to replace him. And you hope that we're not going to be left in the lurch, Kev, because, you know, this summer's going to disappear in the blink of an eye, and we're going to have competitive games again before you know it. And what you do want is you want a manager in place who's going to have a say in the recruitment, because we've seen how that movie plays out if you don't have a say in the recruitment. And just a matter of weeks ago, Ange was talking about us having identified players for the summer recruitment drive. So there's all these things to consider. You don't want it to be knee-jerk, because what can happen is you can make the wrong decision. By the way, you can also make the right decision, because the Ange Postecoglou one, as we described at the beginning of the show, Kev, it was knee-jerk in that we lost out on Eddie Howe. We had to get someone in the building. We'd gone so far down the line with Eddie Howe, we'd left ourselves completely exposed as a football club, and that shouldn't have happened. It just so happened that what we did bring to the club was a huge success. And that's my concern, whether or not this has come as a surprise, because I know you were at the game at the weekend. I didn't have a ticket. And when you looked at Dermot Desmond and Peter Lawwell sitting in the stand, Kev, they knew trouble was afoot. They were looking on at a generational event taking place in front of their eyes in terms of Celtic winning a world record 8th treble, and they couldn't have looked unhappier. They knew, obviously, what was going on in the background, didn't they? And you just hope that they do have something in place, and it's not going to be knee-jerk. Now, I've mentioned Brendan Rodgers because he's currently the favourite to take over at Celtic once the inevitable happens with Ange Postecoglou. Would you rather us do something on more of a left field scale? I know by your very nature, Kev, you'd go for the left field. You do. It's not quite. By the way, I'm not criticising you for that, because when it comes to art and culture, I get that. But this is a wee bit different, I think. When have we ever gone left field? We went left field with Ronnie Dyler. We went left field with Ange. Wim Jansen. Was that left field?
Jansen as well was left field.
Venglos. Yeah. Do we do that again? Do we go left field again? Or do you see a case of Peter Lawwell getting back to the City group again? Listen, it served him well the last time. What do we have? Give me a short list. How do you think he's going to play this?
All right, let's get my cynical one. I want the left field. I think the Norwegian guy, Knudsen, is left field, and I think he's a perfect fit for where we are as a football club at this precise moment in time. I'm maybe coming a bit more round to Jesse Marsh, even though he made a kind of witches titty at Leeds, but Leeds went doing anyway. They're better. But I mean, Leeds United, they appointed Sam Allardyce. Come on. I mean, you deserve what you get if you appoint Sam Allardyce. But I think when you look at what he done with Salzburg, and he was part of the Red Bull group and that as well, which always like promote, always have managers who play a certain way. My first thought was, I'm sure Mark Law was on the phone to this, was tapping into the City Group's database 2 weeks ago, going, right, who's the upcoming coaches that you're watching? Because it's worked well for us before. And it wouldn't surprise me if we get a name that we do not know. It wouldn't surprise me whatsoever. It's somebody that's working within the City Group at this precise moment in time, like Postecoglou. I mean, the only reason that we found out was about Postecoglou was through Mark Law. You need to keep an eye on this boy da. When him and Peter went for like chippies on Troon Beach and that, this guy in Japan's fantastic da, You need to keep an eye on him if Eddie Howe does the dirty on you, but it's difficult. It's really difficult for me to actually get completely worked up about it, because I'm not going to have any say in it whatsoever. And I want them to have a left field, but in the pit of my stomach, I know I think we're going to have another City Group production, or
right, okay,
or Brendan
but it's
Rodgers.
Worked.
But it's worked, aye. But it's worked. But it's worked.
I'm going to go back to this point about having a team, right? A team that specifically was assembled to perform a specific role. Okay. And I get that. I totally get it, right? Because in the past, there's been a scattergun approach to recruitment, Kev. We were bringing in a lot of players, and we keep all the good ones, and all the other ones depart. And then the really, really good ones leave for good money. But this time round, it was very much like we were buying specific players because of their assets and bringing them to the club and making them play a certain way. How rigid is that, though? Because these are all quality players. I'd say they're all quality players. And I'm sure Ange Postecoglou's recruitment will be looked at and scrutinised in the coming days and months in relation to how good his kind of like second season signings were compared to his first. However, how rigid is it? If you've got a quality group of players, and we undoubtedly have a quality group, I would say, of maybe 15 or 16 players, Kev, that if a manager comes in, they don't want to play with inverted full backs. They don't want to play the same kind of style, same kind of tempo, although the tempo thing seems to be a modern attribute to most forward-thinking managers, so I wouldn't expect that to change. Do you see that as being an issue, if it's going to be a completely different look to the team? Because, listen, Kyogo's a quality player. Matt O'Reilly's a quality player. They can adapt to fit another management style, surely.
You would hope so. I mean, if Callum McGregor says after the game on Saturday that professional football players have got to be flexible. I mean, you look at McGregor when he goes and plays for Scotland. He doesn't do the same job for Scotland. Steve Clarke doesn't tell him to do the same job for Scotland as what Ange Postecoglou tells him to do for Celtic. Same with the fullbacks. Greg Taylor doesn't get told to do the same job for Scotland as what he does with Celtic. If you look at the two fullbacks, Taylor has been tailor-made, if you pardon that pun, for playing that inverted fullback role. I don't think Alistair Johnson is as good as that, but Johnson's got better ability to go out wide and more defensive. So there is a difference there. every manager is going to have the same idea, but have their own idea. But the philosophy of high press attacking football can't be lost. We've built a team that's there. We've built a team that's for the high press. We've built a team that's an attacking side. We just can't rip that up when trying to appoint another manager. And we can't get another manager to come in to try to adapt to that. It's got to be somebody that really, really believes in that philosophy. And there is candidates out there that can do that. And I just hope, in the name of own Archdeacon, that the board are thinking the same way as me.
He's not on the odds list, is he? Peter Colliero, yes, Scott Munn. The point with Scott Munn is that he had been working with the City Group and so would have been aware of Ange, who he knows personally. So he's not perhaps worked directly with him, but it is a link. And he joined Tottenham Hotspurs at the beginning of April. Ange Postecoglou probably wouldn't fit the mould of any of the 6 managers in the last 10 years that Spurs have had. So he has now been viewed as a left field appointment. As soon as I got into the studio this morning, Kev, I had the radio on listening to the reaction of the Spurs fans. And I'll tell you what, if you thought that he got a lukewarm reaction when he came to Celtic, you should be hearing the Spurs fans. They're up in arms.
Well,
they're protesting.
I've just received an email from a certain Spurs website, and in the first paragraph, Les Patterson is mentioned in Crocodile Dundee.
Where have we seen this movie playing out before? Patrick McLaughlin, this is very much how I felt when Wim Jansen left. I mentioned the flatness of the Treble Treble win after the announcement, Kev. I think you could go back to the Wim Jansen stopping the 10 and within days we'd lost our manager. What I would say, though, we went into something of a tailspin. You and I have an appreciation of Joe Venglos, Kev. We've spoken about it a lot. But in terms of where the club went after that one single title win to Martin O'Neill, you know, there was a period of time there where we were kind of rudderless, and it's so important that we get the next appointment right when that day happens. It's going to happen this week, it would appear. Now, Kev, for many, many weeks, I've been talking about protecting your assets. Now, I pointed out, everybody knows, we got 9 million quid when Brendan Rodgers left the club. It was the third, I think it's now the 4th highest compensation package ever in world football for a manager when he went to Leicester City. And the reason we got such a deal was due to the fact that we had initially employed him on a 12-month rolling deal, which we do, but then he was given a new deal, which was a 4-year deal. He was into that 4-year deal, and that's the reason we got such an amount of compensation when he finally left. We've been talking about protecting our asset. It's not as simple as that, though, because obviously when someone's on a 12-month rolling deal, they need to agree to sign something more long-term. And I guess that, you know, you can't go to Ange Postecoglou at the time of that meeting when Dermot Desmond was at Celtic Park, when we're heading towards a treble and things are going really well, and there's maybe at that point a hint of interest, and there's maybe even discussions ongoing, and say, would you sign a contract now? It's about being a football club who's ahead of the curve, Kev. At what point do you offer him that deal? I would say after season 1, after winning the double. I mean, he's spoken about exceeding expectations at that stage. Surely at that point, the club should have been pushing to get him under a longer-term deal. Protect your asset.
Who's to say that they weren't? Who's to say that they didn't offer him? Do you want to sign a longer-term deal? Or him or his agent, and his agent went, no, we're quite happy with the way it is. I mean, we don't know what's actually happened behind the scenes there, but I'm sure Dermot Desmond's probably fuming that we are going to get some compensation, but it's not going to be the Rodgers level of compensation that we're going to get, and that'll be disappointing to them. Whereas me, as a supporter, as a fan, I'm just disappointed to be losing a manager who has gave us great success, who I wanted to see him get another year in Europe, because that's what I want. I want Europe. I mean, it was great winning another treble and all that, and I want the board to have that ambition that if you prepare for Europe, the Scottish League will take care of itself. It will take care of itself. So I want us to think about that. I want us to, But as I say, it doesn't matter what I want them to think about. They'll have their own ideas when they're sitting in there, no.
Yeah, they will, Kev. But as fans,
they've probably got phone call. They've probably made phone calls. There's probably names getting kicked about that we didn't ken, and that's it's quite. It's not exciting. It is exciting, and it's not exciting. It's at the same time. It's like we're actually going up the hill on a roller coaster, and we're just waiting on the drop. And when that drop comes, that's when things will get interesting.
I feel more like, as I say before, I've just eaten my candy floss and half a gallon of fizzy juice, and I'm now on the waltzers, mate. Never mind the roller coaster. And every time you see the guy coming up, you're praying that he doesn't spin you, but you're spinning around. That's where I am. Charlie Mack, go get Bodo Glimt manager. They play the way we try to. Yeah, and they did it very, very well against us. I think they actually beat us with ease over the two legs. Pete McGee, the faces on them, PJD, they were chewing the wash. We're talking, of course, about Dermot Desmond and Peter Lowell. Peter Lowell was on his phone looking pretty... He wasn't looking very enamoured. They were more like Statler and Waldorf sitting there watching Celtic win a world record treble. But Kev, it is important to discuss what you see for...
Hopefully Peter Lowell was maybe blocking a couple of agents' numbers, like, so he didn't get any phone calls for them.
Or unblocking them, probably.
Or unblocking them, aye.
Yeah, but it is important to get the views of the Celtic support, and that's what we want to do today. So keep them coming in the comments section. We're actually over 2,000 strong on the live feed at the moment. And if you like what we do on A Celtic State of Mind, give us a big thumbs up on the YouTube video, and also subscribe to the channel. We're going to be with another ex-Celtic manager. I can say that now. Yesterday it slipped out. A wee slip yesterday. I spoke about an ex-Celtic manager when I was talking about Ange. He's not at the door yet, but Gordon Strachan will be joining us at the end of the month in about 3.5 weeks' time, live on the stage. Some tickets available, and the ticket link is underneath. I love Gordon Strachan's chat, but I've even seen him on lists, and I've seen Martin O'Neill on lists. These guys, that isn't forward thinking, Kev. We need to have, a list of people who is, for me, you're going to have people who are solid. Let's be honest here, solid in terms of their results, coaches, and then you're going to have left field appointments that you have to explore a wee bit further. But we can't just go back to the same well and it be the same names time and time again. But also at the same time, I've heard a huge amount of Spurs fans who are unhappy with Ange's appointment. We were talking earlier about the pros and cons of taking a job down south, and you've got the obvious ones. The finances that are at play in the EPL, Kev. We just can't compete. Everybody knows that. We just can't compete with it. But you've got to try and balance that up and say, right, Ange Postecoglou is on a trajectory at the moment. He's on a trajectory in that, as you say, he always had this ambition to get to Europe. He's won trophies, in 3 different continents. He's managed his country to the World Cup finals. His achievements are incredible, and he is on an upward trajectory. So I think that if he's got this ambition to go to the English Premiership, that's all fair and well, but you've got to choose really, really wisely because of the fact that there's such a turnover when it comes to the last 10 years, 6 managers in 10 years. Pochettino was there for 5 of those 10 years, Kev. And he must be looking at that thinking, well, I got a bit of flack. He got a bit of flack for losing 3 away games. It's, when he came to Celtic. And people were looking at him. He's spoken recently about him being something of a joke figure when he came to Celtic. Now, Celtic are a massive club in the Scottish League, but the EPL is a huge league. I mean, the level of scrutiny that you're under in that division. He's going to go to a club at the moment who are not doing that well, Kev. They're not in Europe. And they've, as you say, they've been in Europe for, I don't know for sure, but certainly in the last 10 11 seasons ago, they were in a Europa League quarter-final. I mean, they've been in Europe probably the last 12, 15 years. They're not in European competition. They stand to lose their star man. And he's walking into that. And it's a proper rebuild that he needs to do. Do you get a chance to do that in the EPL? Do you get a chance to rebuild the football team?
But that suits him, eh? The big man will back himself, eh?
He'll back himself.
He'll back himself to turn that round. And he will, if he's... You just have to, you look at the rebuild that he had with us. Yes, it's a bigger league and it's a lot harder league, but he can go for a better class of player. like down there right away that'll actually fit his system. And I mean, what's going to be success for Spurs next season? Back into Europe, top 4 again, maybe a League Cup. I mean, if he wins anything with them, they'll put a statue of him next to Bill Nicholson's statue on the Seven Sisters Road with a wee chicken badge. I mean, that's what will happen. And look, the big fella will back himself to turn it round. And what him and his agent and the football agents that he worked with, he knew goes into a completely different market of transfer targets than the ones that he was with us. A complete and utter different market. And he will be working with a better quality of player right away. He'll only be working with Luke Shaw. He'll only be working with Oragide or whatever his name was. He will, I mean, so...
It was Liam Shaw. We never had Luke Shaw. It was Liam Shaw.
Liam Shaw. See, I mean, maybe they boys will come back now. They're looking forward to pre-season, eh?
No.
Pre-season under Davy Moyes, a 6'2" fullback. There you go. Magic.
No, I don't think we tear it up and start again. But there are undoubted pros. Jim last week says there are no cons. I think when you go to a club who are trigger happy when it comes to gaffers, I think that in itself is something to walk into with trepidation. The fan hostility that he's facing won't bother him in the slightest. The fact that he was the second or even third choice won't bother him in the slightest. But I'm going to ask the question, Kevin, right? Because it is going to inevitably be announced at some point this week. Will Ange Postecoglou do well at Spurs?
We can't answer that.
I'm asking you the question. But will he do well?
We can't answer that. We don't know.
Well, you don't know the answer to most questions.
No, we didn't. Did Jose Mourinho do well at Spurs? No. Did Conte do well at Spurs? No. Right. Is there trouble at Spurs? Yes, from an outsider looking in. But I would back Postecoglou to be a success anywhere that he goes after what I've seen in the last 2 years. And let's not beat about the bush here, because Spurs are a basket case of a club. Even if he like fails there, it's not going to be a slight on him whatsoever.
Well, was Brendan Rodgers a success at Leicester in your view?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Because there's and he was in the top 4 3 seasons running, I believe. Was it top 4, top 6? 3 seasons running. Aye.
It was a success until the Celtic scenario came up again when they wouldn't give him money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you then see that filtering in his press conferences. He starts blaming everybody else for the players not coming in. Right, I'm now going to ask you the question. There's going to be a reaction this week, Kev, that I've already started seeing a reaction with regards to Ange Postecoglou leaving Celtic. We had some great times under Brendan Rodgers as a fan base. Phenomenal times, you know. And obviously, when it ended, things went sour. There's a viral video clip, most of you will have seen it, where he's talking about one day he would come back to Celtic. Why are we talking about Brendan Rodgers? Well, he's the shortest odds. He's a favourite at the moment to replace a gaffer who hasn't left yet. But the legacy of Rodgers was tainted. Safe to say, Kev, it was tainted by the manner in which he left the club. I've seen a lot of stuff online, and I don't agree with it, by the way. What is the legacy of Ange Postecoglou when he leaves, inevitably, when that announcement is made this week? What's his legacy?
He's a treble winning manager. He's brought us such success in the last 2 years. And I'm no like, I ken everybody's looking into his words and all of that. I'm maybe just going to set myself up for a fall here, but I'm going to say anyway. I believed all the bad thumping and all of that. We gave him his chance in Europe, and he's forever going to be forever thankful to Celtic Football Club for that. We may be the greatest club that he ever manages. We may still be that greatest club that he'll ever manage. I reckon he's always going to have a soft spot for Celtic, and for us, I'm always going to have a soft spot for Ange Postecoglou, because look at the fun that he's gave us over the last 2 seasons, domestically anyway. But I wanted to see him have another crack at Europe, and this is where I'm more thinking now. The next guy that comes in need to do well in Europe, pal. But then McGee, but then we're bringing in a new guy, And right away, we've got an excuse for us getting pumped in the Champions League again. We need to give him time. We haven't won a European knockout game for 20 years.
I know. It kind of resets that cycle again. I'm going to bring this up, no to have a go at Scott. It's just that this is the type of comments that I'm seeing. And Scott, you're a regular contributor. Scott Howe, welcome to the show. Human greed always wins in the end, no loyalty. That's the type of comment I'm talking about, Kev. So he's being accused, Ange, of being greedy, not having loyalty. What I would counter that by saying is that he's not promised anything that he hasn't delivered, Kev, right? He's not. He's not promised anything he hasn't delivered. And we said it earlier on, if indeed the conversation was had between the powers that be at Celtic and Ange Postecoglou that he needs, or we wanted him to sign a new improved deal, and he's knocked it back, then he's not promised anything he's not delivered. He's not signed a 4-year deal, because if you sign a 4-year deal, you're saying, I want to be with you guys for 4 years. He's not done that. And I know how a rolling contract works. Every day you're employed for the next year. But the time comes when an offer is made because you've been a success. And then obviously we will try and stand in his way. We've obviously given them permission to go and speak to Spurs now, and the deal will be done. But this is what I'm talking about with legacy. There's a lot of people I'm hearing on social media in particular, but in the comments as well, who are of the view that the legacy is tainted, Kev. The legacy is tainted. I don't agree with that.
I didn't agree with that either. What he's done was he's been offered an opportunity his lifetime. Like we offered him it, and I said that about 10 minutes ago. And that comment is right. We owe him nothing. He owes us nothing. We owe him nothing. That's it. That's the bottom line. What he's done in the last couple of weeks is like when you're going out and you tell your wife that you're only going out for one pint, then you end up rocking him at the shutting time. And you've no
returned to those days of you since you
started.
I have not. Again.
No, but that's what it is. He knows full well that he's going to be out to shutting time, but he tells the missus and the Waynes, I'll be back, I'll bring you back a chippy at 9 o'clock. And he's got no danger that he's going to do it. That's all he's done, but he's done it in a football term. That's the way I see it. Good luck.
Here's the other end of it. He owes Celtic nothing. He came, he conquered. I wish him all the best. He stayed till the end of the season, which is admirable. He's not done anything. He's delivered everything that he came to deliver, I think. You were talking about Europe. Yeah, and he even, let's not forget, we went toe-to-toe with Real Madrid for 60 minutes. That's turning into a cliche as well. But we did. We absolutely did. So, with regards to what Ange Postecoglou has brought to this club, I think he gave the board a get-out-of-jail-free card when we had put all our eggs in the Eddie Howe basket, Kev. And it basically saved their skins in more ways than one. And in the last 2 years, you and I think a lot of our conversations prior to that period were around the inability of the board to run this football club. We've barely spoken about it in 2 years, Kev. He's taken the heat off the board. If you're winning trophies, you're happy with the guy in charge, you're happy with the players on the park, you don't focus on the board as much. There's a hardcore who do, but generally speaking, football fans are quite happy if we're winning. Ange Postecoglou's been that safety net, that safety blanket for the board. But now it's all eyes back on the board, Kevin, isn't it? Where do we go from here? Come on, wrap it up. Where are we going to go from here?
As they've got to end their money now, eh?
Mm-hmm.
They put their pound in the fruit machine and they won a jackpot with Postecoglou. And now they're standing looking at that fruit machine again with all their wages in their pocket going, we need to put our money back in here and see what actually happens, eh?
It can't be, for me, it cannot be as, much of a gamble this time round. Because I'll tell you what, they struck rich with Ange. It's got to be a process now. I think a proper process. I don't think the process was done properly the last time round, Kev. We basically thought, we're going to get Eddie Howe, and that was the focus. As much as the PR machine said it wasn't, that was the focus. You just need to look at the timeline. Who was the gaffer before then? Neil Lennon. Who else was considered for that job, Kev? Who else was considered for the Celtic manager's job when Neil Lennon got it? And this is my concern. Well, this is my concern.
We were telling everybody, I mean, maybe they can go and find their CVs now, wherever they are, in that drawer somewhere. Maybe they can.
Rafa Benitez's one.
Aye,
the one with Benitez.
Maybe we can go and find that again, eh? But we need to Aye, it's over to use, boys. It's over to the boys on the board now and go. But you saying you didn't think they'll take a chance again, eh? I don't think the guy for Bodo Clint's as a chance. Well, every manager's a chance. Every single manager's a chance. But there's certain guys that just look like a fit. They need to go and get a fit for where we are as a football club now. And that's what they should be looking at. They shouldn't be looking at name. They shouldn't be looking at status. They should be looking for somebody that's a fit for Celtic Football Club where we are now.
Yeah, and by the way, Newton's name's coming up time and time again. Danielle, welcome to the show. A bit embarrassing going to Japan with no Ange and him probably taking the better of the Japanese boys. Oh, by the way, you seen the tweet about or the WhatsApp message about the Carvalho company. I mean, Angie's wife said it's not happening, so it's not going to happen. And then before you know it, that breathes life into Ange is going to stay. Right, we're being realistic now. There's been permission given by Celtic for Ange Postecoglou to speak to Tottenham Hotspur. The deal's going to happen now, and it's just a case of arguing the toss over the compensation, Kev, and maybe some various other things around players. You know, there is that concern. Players, right? If Ange Postecoglou goes to Spurs, they might want to take Hatate and Kyogo. The club have to be quite strong on that can't happen within a period of time.
But the club, if he wants to take both of them, I only reckon he would be interested in one of them. I don't think he'd be interested in Kyogo.
Which one? Right. You reckon
I think it'd be Hatate. I think it would be Hatate. Then we just go, well, 30 million then. 30 million. Let's fleece you. Let's fleece Spurs.
We're in control there.
Just play hardball with them, eh? But I'm not too worried about him coming back. And maybe because I think he knew early on in one of his press conferences, somebody asked, a Scottish journalist asked him about the state of the Scottish League, says compared to the J League, and he gave a very roundabout answer, as if to say the Scottish League's more physical, the J League's more technical. And I think when he's gone down there, I don't think we've got any fit player to go into that level of the Premier League. I don't think we do. Right. And that's no thing with any of players, but I only think one I can actually see the development in is probably Hatate. I don't think any of the rest of them. I don't think any of the rest of them are. I'm not too worried about that actually.
We very soon will be celebrating our 6th birthday, A Celtic State of Mind. Every single weekday we come out at 12:30 and we cover all the games. Also next season there's going to be loads more content. It's going to look a bit different as well because we're going to get out the studio and we're going to get on the road and we're going to do all of these things. But if an announcement should happen, Kev, we will in the studio hopefully be able to go out and do a bulletin so that everybody can share their views on it. There seems to be a general acceptance that Ange is on his way. It's very sad that it happens so soon after such a big occasion, Kev. But we'll cover every single movement, every single kick of the ball, regardless who is the manager of Celtic Football Club. We are going on the road ourselves. We're going to be on the stage with an ex-manager in Gordon Strachan in a few weeks' time. I'm going to be asking him all about his career and particularly his time at Celtic as well. There's a few tickets left at Barra's Art and Design, so the link is underneath this particular video. If you like what you've seen today and you enjoy what you see, give us a thumbs up on the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe. And also let us know if there's any lurkers in the comment section who have subscribed, Kev, on a Monday hundreds. Just to come in
absolutely
and give us stick, because, you know, at the end of the day, Kev, there's no much else for them to talk about, is there? Because Celtic have won everything in the domestic game. And there might be a change of management, which is obviously now your obsession. Okay, thanks everybody for getting involved. Well over 2,000 on the live stream. Sorry to cut you off, but it's time up for the Acsom Bulletin. And thank you to Kevin Graham for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
See you later, everybody.